I used to be really good at one thing, blaming others for my problems. Whenever something went wrong, it was never my fault. I'd point the finger at my circumstances, the people around me, or just bad luck. It felt easier that way. But here's what I didn't realize. Blaming others was slowly destroying my life. Today I want to talk about the harm of blaming others instead of taking responsibility for your own life. I'll share some personal stories and examples of how blaming others kept me stuck, and how taking responsibility transformed my mindset and my entire life. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a life where every setback, every disappointment, and every failure is someone else's fault. For years, whenever something didn't go my way, I was quick to shift the blame. It was almost like a reflex, an automatic response to shield myself from any form of self-criticism. If I didn't get a promotion, it was because my boss was unfair. I would convince myself that the system was rigged against me, that I was a victim of office politics. If I struggled with finances, I'd say, well, the economy is just bad. I never considered that maybe my spending habits or lack of financial planning could be part of the problem. It was always someone or something else's fault. I was never the one to blame, and that made me feel temporarily relieved. And that's the problem with the blame game. It feels good in the moment because you don't have to confront your own role in the situation. You get to walk away feeling like the victim, not the perpetrator. Blaming others is a way of avoiding responsibility. It's a defense mechanism that keeps you from having to look in the mirror and ask the tough questions. It's easier to say, this is happening to me, rather than, how am I contributing to this? It's a way to dodge the uncomfortable truth that maybe, just maybe, you have a part to play in your own misfortunes. But when you constantly blame others, you give up your power to change anything. You surrender your ability to take control and make a difference in your own life. At the time I didn't realize it, but every time I blamed someone else, I was reinforcing the idea that I was helpless, that I had no control over my life. It was a subtle but powerful way of telling myself that I was a victim of circumstances. It became a self-fulfilling cycle. The more I blamed, the more powerless I felt, and the more powerless I felt, the more I blamed. The more I blamed, the more powerless I felt. It was a vicious cycle that kept me trapped in a state of perpetual frustration and helplessness. I remember a specific moment that really changed things for me. It was a day like any other, but it ended up being a turning point in my life. I had just lost out on a big opportunity at work, and my first reaction was, of course. I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me, and I couldn't help but think, why does this always happen to me? My boss doesn't like me. I started going down that spiral, blaming the people around me, blaming the system. I felt trapped in a cycle of negativity, convinced that external factors were the root of my problems. But something clicked that day. I thought to myself, what if? What if this isn't about them? What if this is about me? It was a radical shift in perspective, one that made me pause and really think. That was the first time I really started to look inward. I asked myself some hard questions, questions that I had been avoiding for a long time. Had I really been putting in the effort? Was I truly giving my best? Or was I just going through the motions? Was I communicating my value? Did my colleagues and superiors even know what I was capable of, or was I hiding in the shadows? Was I taking responsibility for my own growth? Was I actively seeking out opportunities to learn and improve, or was I waiting for them to come to me? The honest answer was no. It was a hard truth to swallow, but it was also empowering. For the first time, I saw a path forward that was within my control, because for the first time I realized that if I was part of the problem, I could also be part of the solution. It was a wake-up call that set me on a journey of self-discovery and growth, one that I am still on today. Blaming others doesn't just show up at work. It seeps into your relationships too. I used to have this habit of blaming the people closest to me whenever things went wrong. If I had a disagreement with a friend, it was always their fault. They're just too sensitive, I'd say. Or, they don't understand me. But the truth was, I wasn't taking responsibility for my part in the conflict. The more I blamed others in my relationships, the more disconnected I became. I wasn't open to hearing the other person's perspective because in my mind, I was always the victim. I wasn't willing to take a step back and ask, what can I do differently? And that damaged some really important connections in my life. Here's where everything shifted for me. I decided to start taking responsibility, not just for my successes, but for my failures and challenges too. It was a pivotal moment, a turning point that changed my perspective on life. I stopped blaming external factors and started asking, what can I do to change this? How can I influence the outcome? It was a shift from a victim mindset to a proactive one. How can I take control of this situation? What steps can I take to make a difference? These questions became my guiding principles. And guess what? Things didn't change overnight, but they started to change. Slowly but surely, I began to see progress. Each small step forward was a victory. I learned that by taking responsibility, I was reclaiming my power. It was empowering to know that I had control over my actions and decisions. If I could own my mistakes, I could also own the solutions. This realization was liberating and gave me a sense of purpose. Instead of waiting for life to get better, I started taking active steps to make it better. I became the architect of my own destiny. It was a journey of self-discovery and growth. Taking responsibility doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything that goes wrong. It means understanding that you have the power to influence your circumstances. It means recognizing that you always have a choice in how you respond. Every decision, every action is within your control. When you shift from blaming others to taking ownership, you realize that you have the power to create the life you want. It's a mindset that transforms challenges into opportunities and obstacles into stepping stones. There are so many benefits to taking responsibility for your life. First, it gives you clarity. When you stop blaming others, you can see the situation for what it really is. You're no longer clouded by frustration or resentment. You're focused on what you can. Taking responsibility also improves your relationships. When you stop pointing fingers, you open up space for real connection. You start asking, how can we fix this together? Instead of, how did you mess this up? And most importantly, taking responsibility gives you back control. Life doesn't feel like it's happening to you anymore. You're an active participant, not just a passive bystander. You're driving the car, not just sitting in the passenger seat. The next time you catch yourself blaming someone else for your situation, pause and ask yourself, what part do I play in this? What can do to change it? You'll be surprised at how much power you actually have when you stop blaming and start taking responsibility. It's not always easy, but the shift from blaming others to owning your life is the most empowering thing you can do. It's the difference between feeling stuck and feeling in control. It's the key to real change. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear this message. Taking responsibility isn't just about changing your mindset, it's about changing your life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.